In the late summer of 1977, a small group of dreamers led by Carl Sagan and Frank Drake gathered at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory to perform an act of supreme cosmic hubris. They were preparing to launch a message in a bottle into the greatest ocean ever known. This message took the form of 2 gold-plated copper phonograph records bolted to the hulls of the Voyager spacecraft. On these discs, we etched our greatest hits, the sound of a mother's first words to her child, the complex mathematical beauty of Bach, and the sounds of wind, thunder, and birdsong. We included a map, a pulsar map, pointing directly back to our home, a small, pale blue dot orbiting a mundane yellow star. We were children shouting into a dark forest, convinced that whatever was out there would listen with the same curiosity and benevolence we felt when we sent the signal. For nearly 50 years, those records have travelled through the freezing, silent vacuum, crossing the invisible boundary of the heliopause and venturing into the true interstellar dark. We assumed the journey was one way. We assumed that if the record were ever found, it would be millions of years after we were gone, a ghost of a civilization found by a ghost of a galaxy. But we were wrong. It is a Tuesday in late May 2026. Inside the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex in the Mojave Desert, the air is thin and carries the scent of sun-baked sage and ozone. David, a senior communications engineer who has spent 24 years listening to the faint whispers of dying satellites, is nursing a lukewarm coffee. His monitors are filled with the familiar, comforting hum of cosmic background radiation, the space roar, that deafening blast of radio static that NASA first measured with the Arcade balloon in 2006, which remains 6 times louder than the combined emissions of every known star and galaxy. To David, this roar is the universe's natural state, a chaotic, meaningless scream. Then, at precisely 3:14 am, the roar stops. On David's screen, a narrowband signal of impossible precision begins to overwrite the static. It is originating from the exact coordinates of Voyager 1, currently drifting on the inner edge of the Oort cloud. This shouldn't be possible. Voyager's plutonium-powered generators are nearly exhausted. The craft should be a silent hunk of metal. Yet, David watches as a massive data burst begins to stream into the Goldstone array. This isn't a malfunction. It isn't a pulsar or a glitch in the software. It is a structured response. As the computers begin to decode the transmission, the team at Goldstone realizes with a collective sickening vertigo that the golden record has been returned. But it has been changed. The pulsar map has been redacted as if to hide our location. The recordings of our laughter and music have been scrubbed. In their place is a series of corrections, 10 distinct data packages that point to specific anomalies within our own solar system and our own history. It is a rejection of our invitation. It is as if something has looked at our message in a bottle, found it dangerously naive, and sent it back with a warning: you are looking for us in the stars, but you haven't even begun to understand what is already here. The first correction on the return disk points not to a distant galaxy, but to the very ground we stand on. We have long believed that Earth is a singular, unified world, but the data suggests we are walking on a planetary graveyard. Beneath the crust, deep within the mantle, geophysicists have already begun to find the physical evidence of what the return signal is trying to tell us. 2 colossal alien structures, the LLSVPs or the blobs, sit directly on our core, each 100 times taller than Mount Everest. These aren't just rocks, they have a different chemical signature, a different density, a different history. The unsettling implication is that Earth did not form alone. We are the result of a violent, ancient collision with a Mars-sized protoplanet called Theia. We are living on the fused remains of two worlds, and the alien presence we seek may be the very foundation of the continent beneath your feet. We are not the sole owners of this planet, we are the descendants of a cosmic accident, building our cities on the fossilized remains of an alien world that was swallowed whole by our own. David stares at the screen as the second data package begins to unspool. It doesn't contain pictures of alien ships, it contains a sequence of human DNA. It highlights the 19% of our genetic code that belongs to a ghost species, an ancestor with no fossils, no tools, and no name, yet which lives inside us. The signal is forcing us to realise that the golden record was a lie. We sent a recording of human music to the stars, but we don't even know what human is. The air in the Goldstone control room feels colder now. The golden record was meant to be our introduction to the cosmos, a proud declaration of our existence. But as David watches the 10th and final data package finalise, he realises that the cosmos isn't ignoring us. It is watching us with the weary patience of a parent watching a child play with a loaded gun. We sent a map to our house, and the universe sent it back with the locks changed. The 10 mysteries that follow are not just scientific puzzles, they are the reasons why the stars have remained silent. They are the cracks in the mirror of our reality, the moments where the third state of existence, neither life nor death, leaks into our world through the eyes of a possessed girl in Poland or the biological glitch of the Tully monster. We wanted to know if we were alone. The return of the golden record provides the answer, and it is more disturbing than the silence. We are not alone. We are just the only ones who don't know the rules of the game. It is late October in 2019, and the air inside a windowless laboratory at the University of California, Los Angeles, is thick with the scent of recycled air and the low-frequency hum of liquid-cooled servers. Dr. Sarah Chen, a computational biologist who has spent the better part of a decade staring at the digital ghosts of our ancestors, is leaning so close to her monitor that the blue light reflects in her pupils, mapping out a landscape of adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. On her screen is a sequence of what we use to dismissively call junk na, the vast, sprawling wilderness of the human genome that doesn't seem to code for proteins, the parts of the Book of Life that we thought were just typo-ridden footnotes. But Sarah has found something that isn't a typo. She is looking at a specific genetic signature found in the genomes of the Mende people of West Africa, a string of code that is loud, clear, and utterly alien. She runs the sequence against the known Neanderthal markers. No match. She checks it against the Denisovans, those mysterious cave dwellers of the Altai Mountains. Nothing. She widens the search, reaching back through the evolutionary tree to the great apes, to the primates, to the very beginning of the mammalian line. The software returns a cold, blinking cursor of failure. The DNA she is holding in her hands, a digital ghost extracted from living, breathing humans, refuses to map to any known branch of the primate family tree. It is as if she has opened a family photo album and found a stranger standing in the background of every picture, a figure with no name, no face, and no history. This is the moment Sarah Chen realises that the story of human evolution, the one we've been telling ourselves for a century, is a carefully edited lie. For decades, we walked through the world believing our history was a clean, linear progression, a march from the African savannah to the cities of the 21st century. We thought we were the sole survivors of a singular lineage, the winners of a biological lottery. But the corrections returned on the golden record have highlighted this specific section of our code for a reason. The second package of data received at the Goldstone array isn't just a map of our cells, it is a catalogue of our occupants. What Sarah and her colleagues have uncovered is the existence of a ghost species. According to the data buried in our own marrow, our ancestors did not walk alone. Roughly 360,000 to 1 million years ago, a lineage of hominins diverged from our family tree, heading into the shadows of a world we can no longer see. They grew, they evolved, and they adapted in total isolation. Then, between 6,000 and 124,000 years ago, they emerged from the dark. They met our ancestors, they lived with them, they loved them, and then they vanished. The disturbing anomaly isn't just that they existed, it's that they are still here. In some modern populations, up to 19% of their genetic ancestry traces back to this ghost. 19%. That is not a trace. That is a significant portion of a person's biological identity. It is enough DNA to influence how your immune system fights off a virus, how your brain processes a memory, or how your body responds to the cold. We are walking around with a fifth of our being belonging to a creature for which we have absolutely zero physical evidence. In the archives of paleontology, there are no skulls for this ghost. There are no femur bones, no teeth, no flint tools found in the mud of an ancient riverbed. There are no cave paintings of their hunts, no burials, no remnants of their fires. They exist only as a statistical shadow, a mathematical ripple in the pool of our DNA. They are a species defined entirely by their absence in the physical world and their overwhelming presence in our internal one. We must ask ourselves, how can a species be so dominant as to leave a 19% imprint on the human race, yet remain so elusive that not a single bone has survived the passage of time? This is the vertigo that the golden record forces us to confront. If the history of our world is a physical record, these ghosts have been scrubbed from the surface. Yet they have archived themselves within the very mechanism of our survival. Think about what it means to carry 19% of a stranger within you. In the quiet moments of the night, when you feel an instinctual fear of the dark or a sudden, unexplainable flash of intuition, you have to wonder, is that you or is that the ghost? Is that the part of you that knows how to build a skyscraper? Or is it the part of you that remembers a world where the stars were the only lights and the forests were filled with things we can no longer name? The unsettling implication of this correction is that we are not the sole owners of our bodies. We are not a single unified species that conquered the earth. We are a living museum. We are a collection of biological artifacts, a patchwork quilt of lineages that shouldn't have survived. We are the archive for a species that may have realized their time on the surface was ending and decided to hide in the only place no predator could reach, our own genetic code. This realization brings a sense of profound isolation. We look into the mirror and see a face we recognize as human, but 19% of that face is a mask worn by a ghost. We are a hybrid civilization, the result of a cosmic or biological prototyping project that we are only now beginning to understand. The golden record we sent out into the void was an invitation to the stars, but the return of the disk is a reminder to look inward. Why would an advanced intelligence, capable of intercepting a probe at the edge of the solar system, choose to highlight our junk DNA? Perhaps because they know that the ghost species isn't actually dead. In the same way that the third state of existence allows cells from a dead frog to reorganize into xenobots, rewriting their own rules to build a new life form. Perhaps our junk DNA is a latent program. Perhaps the ghost species didn't vanish at all. They simply changed states. They became a biological backup drive, waiting for a specific trigger to reboot. Imagine a world where death is not the end of the organism, but the activation of the archive. We see hints of this in the phenomenon of terminal lucidity, where patients with destroyed brain tissue suddenly regain their memories and personalities just before they pass away. Doctors have no sure explanation for how a brain that has physically decayed can suddenly form complex, clear thoughts. But if we are a living museum, if our bodies are merely the host for a deeper, more resilient lineage, then terminal lucidity isn't a miracle. It is the museum curator turning on the lights for one final inspection before the building is decommissioned. As Sarah Chen sits in her lab in 2019, she doesn't know about the golden record's return. She doesn't know that the space roar detected in 2006 is actually the radio leakage from the machinery that manages this cosmic archive. She only knows that she is looking at something that shouldn't be there. She is looking at a sequence that belongs to a species that was never supposed to be found. We are a species with amnesia, living in a house built by people we don't remember, using a language, the language of DNA, that we can't fully translate. The 19% of us that is ghost is the most honest part of our history, because it is the part that cannot be hidden by fossils or eroded by time. It is a record written in the most permanent ink in the universe. And so we walk through our lives unaware that we are never truly alone. Every time your heart beats, every time your neurons fire, you are exercising a legacy that is millions of years older than your name. You are the vessel for a silent passenger. We are a civilization of hybrids, a planetary scale experiment in genetic storage. And the most disturbing part of the mystery isn't that the ghosts are in our past. The most disturbing part is the possibility that the museum is still being curated. If 19% of you is a ghost species with no physical remains, you have to ask, where are they now? Are they truly gone, or are they simply watching through the 19% of your eyes that belong to them? Are we the masters of our destiny, or are we just the biological protective casing for something far more ancient, far more patient, and far more alien than we ever dared to imagine? The golden record has been returned, and the ghost in the mirror is the first of its warnings. We are not who we think we are. We are the survivors of a collision, not just of planets like Theia and Earth, but of lineages. We are the living evidence of a history that has been systematically erased from the world, leaving only the code behind. As the data bursts from Voyager, one continues to stream into the Goldstone computers. The team realizes that the corrections are getting more specific. The next package doesn't point to our DNA or the rocks beneath our feet. It points to the sky, to a place where the stars themselves are disappearing, and the silence isn't a natural phenomenon, but a choice. In the quiet, climate-controlled sanctuaries of the world's seismic monitoring stations, the Earth is never truly silent. It hums with a constant low-frequency vibration, the space roar of our own planet's interior. It's good for a geophysicist. This noise is the background radiation of a career spent listening to the heartbeat of a giant. In May 2021, a massive earthquake struck deep beneath the South Sandwich Islands. While the world above remained largely unaware of the tectonic shift miles below the ocean floor, the seismic waves from the event began their long, invisible journey through the guts of the planet. These waves, primary and secondary, are the sonar of the deep. They travel faster through cold, hard rock and slow down when they encounter heat or density. They are the only way we can see the interior of our world, a place more inaccessible to us than the surface of Mars. Imagine a researcher, perhaps sitting in a dimly lit office in 2021, watching the jagged lines of a seismograph unspool across a monitor. As the waves from the South Sandwich quake, pass through the mantle and approach the boundary of the Earth's liquid outer core beneath the African continent, something impossible happens. The waves don't just transition, they stumble. They slow to a crawl, as if hitting a thick, invisible wall of sludge. This geophysicist isn't looking at a malfunction. They are looking at the correction highlighted in the data burst from the returned golden record. They are looking at the LLSVPs, the large low shear velocity provinces. To the scientific community, they are simply known as the blobs. But to call them blobs is to diminish the most terrifying architectural feature of our planet. These are two colossal, unimaginable structures sitting directly on top of our molten core. One sits beneath Africa, the other beneath the Pacific Ocean. To understand their scale, you must abandon your human sense of proportion. Each of these structures is roughly the size of a continent, but they are not flat. They are vertical titans, rising through the mantle like jagged subterranean mountain ranges. They are 100 times taller than Mount Everest. If you could strip away the Earth's crust and mantle, you would see them. Two glowing gargantuan masses of dense, heavy rock, clinging to the core like parasites. But the mystery isn't just their size, it is their nature. The seismic data reveals that these structures are much denser and have a completely different chemical signature than the rest of the Earth's mantle. They do not belong here. They are chemically alien. For years, we believed the Earth was a singular, unified object, a world that formed from the dust of the early solar system in a slow, orderly accretion. But the Golden Record's correction forces us to confront a more violent reality. The leading theory, supported by the strange chemistry of these blobs, is that they are the fossilized remains of Theia. Roughly 4.5 billion years ago, when the solar system was still a chaotic shooting gallery of protoplanets, a Mars-sized world named Theia was on a collision course with the infant Earth. It was a giant impact, a cataclysm so violent that it nearly pulverized both worlds. The debris from this collision was flung into orbit, eventually coalescing to form our moon. But the moon is only part of the story. The rest of Theia didn't just bounce off, it was swallowed. As the two planets fused in a white-hot furnace of kinetic energy, the denser iron-rich heart of Theia didn't mix with the Earth's mantle. Instead, it sank. Like a stone dropped into a pool of thick honey, the remnants of this alien world drifted downward through the molten interior of the Earth until they hit the core. There they have remained for 4.5 billion years, two massive, unassimilated chunks of a dead planet buried 1,800 miles beneath the ground you are standing on. This is the vertigo of the LLSVPs. When you walk across the surface of the Earth, you are not walking on a single world. You are walking on a planetary graveyard. You are a passenger on a binary planet, a hybrid world built from the fused corpses of two different celestial bodies. The very ground beneath Africa and the Pacific is being held up by the skeletal remains of an alien visitor that arrived before life even had a name. But the correction on the Golden Record suggests something even more disturbing. These alien continents are not just inert fossils, they are active participants in our survival. The Earth's magnetic field, the invisible shield that protects our atmosphere from being stripped away by the solar wind, is generated by the geodynamo, the swirling motion of liquid iron in our outer core. Iskans, this field is what allows life to exist. Without it, the Earth would be as barren and dead as Mars. But the movement of that liquid iron is influenced by the heat and gravity of the mantle above it. Because the LLSVPs are so much denser and chemically different from the surrounding rock, they act like massive thermal blankets or dams resting on the core. They disrupt the flow of heat. They dictate where the molten iron rises and where it falls. Recent studies of the Levantine Iron Age anomaly, a period 3,000 years ago, when the Earth's magnetic field suddenly supercharged to 1.5 times its current strength, suggest that our magnetic shield is capable of massive, unexplained spikes. The unsettling implication is that the alien chemistry of Theia might be the hidden hand at the wheel of our planet's protection. Our lives, our atmosphere, and our very evolution may be tethered to the chemical whims of a dead planet's remains. If the blobs shift, if they settle, or if their alien chemistry reacts with the core in ways our models don't yet understand, the shield that protects us could fluctuate, weaken, or vanish. We sent a golden record into the stars to tell the universe we were a pale blue dot, a singular home for a singular race. The universe sent it back to tell us that we are living on a mirror planet of our own making, a world that is half guest and half host. We are not the masters of a planet. We are the tenants of a collision site. As the geophysicist in 2021 stares at the seismic waves slowing down under Africa, they are witnessing the literal slowing of time. Those waves are passing through rock that hasn't seen the sun in 4 billion years. Rock that saw the birth of the moon and the death of a world. The blobs are the ultimate ghost species, larger than any biological entity, sitting at the centre of our reality, silent and heavy. We look to the sky for alien life, searching for a signal from a distant star or a craft entering our atmosphere. But the Golden Record's first correction tells us we've been looking in the wrong direction. The most massive alien structures in the solar system aren't orbiting another star. They are right here. They are 100 Everests tall. They are made of a world that no longer exists, and they are the only reason you are alive to hear this. But as David at Goldstone watches the data unspool further, he realizes the LLSVPs are just the foundation. The corrections are moving from the rocks to the void, to a place in the constellation Boötes where the silence isn't just a lack of sound, but a deliberate erasure of light. The third data package from the returned Golden Record does not point to the Earth's core or the secrets of our blood. Instead, it points to a hole in the sky. As David watches the coordinates populate on his screen at the Goldstone complex, he realizes the signal is directing our attention to a patch of the northern hemisphere near the constellation of the Ploughman. For most of human history, we looked at this region and saw a scattering of distant stars, a few lonely pinpricks of light in an otherwise dark sky. We assumed the darkness was just distance. We assumed the universe was a vast, relatively uniform tapestry of matter. But in 1981, a man named Robert Kirshner decided to pull on a loose thread in that tapestry. It was a crisp, clear night at the Kitt Peak National Observatory in Arizona. Kirshner, a young astronomer with a penchant for mapping the large-scale structure of the cosmos, was using the 4-metre Mayol telescope to peer deeper into the darkness than anyone had before. He wasn't looking for something specific. He was looking for everything. He expected to find the cosmic web, the intricate lace-like filaments of galaxies that bind the universe together. According to the standard model of cosmology, the universe on a large scale should look like a sponge or a collection of soap bubbles with galaxies clustering along the edges of vast empty spaces. Kirshner's goal was to measure the redshift of thousands of galaxies in the direction of Boötes, calculating their distance and position to build a 3-dimensional map of our corner of the universe. He pointed his telescope at a region of space that should have been teeming with activity. Based on the average distribution of matter, a volume of space that size should have contained at least 2,000 to 3,000 galaxies. Istaggur Kirshner looked into the eyepiece, figuratively speaking, and found nothing. He checked his instruments. He recalibrated his sensors. He looked again. In a spherical region of space spanning an inconceivable 330 million light-years across, Kirshner and his team could find only a handful of galaxies, barely 60 in a desert that should have been a metropolis. This was the discovery of the Boötes Void, a place that has since earned the reputation as the scariest location in the known universe. To understand the scale of this great nothing, you have to imagine the Milky Way galaxy, our home, with its 200 billion stars, placed at the centre of this void. If we lived in the heart of Boötes, We would have looked at the night sky for thousands of years and seen absolutely nothing but our own stars. We would have had no way of knowing that other galaxies existed. We would have believed the Milky Way was the entire universe. It wasn't until the 1960s, with the advent of powerful radio telescopes, that we would have even suspected there was anything else out there. The Boötes void is a sphere of silence so profound it defies the logic of cosmic evolution. If the universe is a soap bubble, the Boötes void is a bubble that has grown far too large, threatening to pop the very reality we understand. This sense of being exposed in a vast, empty landscape is a feeling we often encounter in our modern lives, though on a much smaller scale. We move through the digital void of the internet, believing we are alone in our rooms, safe behind our screens. But just as the Boötes void hides its true nature behind a mask of emptiness, the digital world is often less private than it seems. Our data, our histories, and our locations are frequently harvested by entities we cannot see, casting a shadow over our personal space. In a universe where being seen can be a liability, securing your own digital borders becomes a necessity. Whether you are navigating the cosmic web or the World Wide Web, having the right tools to encrypt your presence and vanish from the prying eyes of trackers is the only way to ensure your private world remains truly private. When we return to the science of the void, the traditional explanation is that smaller, natural voids simply merged over billions of years, like bubbles of air joining together in a glass of water. But there is a problem with this natural explanation. The Boötes void is almost perfectly spherical. It is too clean. It is too empty. And the few galaxies that are there are arranged in a bizarre tube-like structure that looks less like a random alignment and more like a bridge. This is where the correction from the golden record becomes truly unsettling. The data points us to an extreme theory that has haunted the fringes of astrophysics for decades, the Dyson sphere hypothesis. In 1960, physicist Freeman Dyson proposed that a sufficiently advanced civilization, what we call a Kardashev Type 2 or Type 3 civilization, would eventually outgrow the energy of its home planet. To survive, they would build a shell or a swarm of collectors around their entire star, capturing 100% of its energy output. To an outside observer, that star would effectively disappear. Its visible light would be blocked, replaced only by a faint telltale glow of infrared waste heat. Now, take that concept and scale it up. Imagine a civilization so old, so vast, and so hungry for energy that it doesn't just enclose one star. It encloses an entire galaxy, then 10 galaxies, then 100. As this civilization expands, it would leave behind a growing wake of darkness. To us, looking through our telescopes from millions of light years away, it would look like a void. It would look like galaxies were simply vanishing from the record. The Boötes void may not be an empty space at all. It may be the most crowded place in the universe, a sector where every bit of starlight is being harvested by an intelligence that has moved beyond the need for visibility. The implication is a form of cosmic vertigo. If the Boötes void is an engineering project, it is a blackout on a scale we cannot fathom. It suggests that the great silence we hear in the stars isn't because no one is out there, but because the ones who are out there have decided to close the curtains. They have turned their sector of the universe into a closed system, a dark room where they can work undisturbed by the prying eyes of children like us. But the data from the golden record doesn't stop with the silence. It highlights a connection that makes the engineered silence even more terrifying. In 2021, an observatory in Utah detected the Amaterasu particle, an ultra-high energy cosmic ray with 240 exa-electron volts of power. It was a particle of such impossible energy that it defied the standard model of physics. When astronomers traced its path back to its source, they found that it didn't come from a star or a black hole. It came from a dead zone. It came from the direction of a void. Why would a place of nothingness fire a high-energy particle directly at our galaxy? Perhaps the void isn't empty, and perhaps the silence isn't a lack of signal. Perhaps the space roar we've been hearing, the deafening blast of radio static that David is monitoring at Goldstone, is the literal sound of the machinery within the void. We are like ants living on the edge of a construction site, listening to the muffled roar of engines we don't understand and calling it nature. The boat's void is a reminder that in the cosmos, empty is a loaded word. It is a place where the light has been erased, and the only thing left is the weight of what is hidden. As David stares at the coordinates for the void, he realizes that the rejection of our golden record wasn't an insult. It was a warning that the map we sent out was essentially a please occupy sign, and that some regions of the universe have spent billions of years trying to make sure they are never found. We sent our music and our laughter into the dark forest, hoping for a friend. But the boat's void tells us that in the real universe, the smartest thing you can do is stay quiet and keep the lights off. The fourth package is complete. The signal from Voyager 1 shifts again, moving from the macro to the micro, from the vast engineered silences of the deep universe to a creature found in the mud of Illinois that defies the very laws of evolution. High in the desert plateau of Millard County, Utah, the wind has a specific, lonely character. It carries the scent of dry brush and ancient dust, whistling through the thousands of surface detectors and fluorescent telescopes that make up the Telescope Array project. It is a place designed for silence, located far from the electrical hum of civilization, so that we might better hear the screams of the universe. In May 2021, while the rest of the world was slowly emerging from a global lockdown, a researcher sat in the control room, surrounded by the flickering amber glow of monitoring screens. The night had been unremarkable, a steady trickle of low-energy protons and atomic nuclei raining down from the sky, the usual cosmic drizzle that has bathed our planet for eons. Then, at a moment that seemed to pause the rotation of the Earth itself, the array's sensors didn't just trigger, they screamed, a single subatomic particle moving so close to the speed of light that the difference was purely theoretical, slammed into our atmosphere. As it struck a nitrogen nucleus, it triggered a cascading shower of billions of secondary particles, a literal waterfall of energy that lit up the digital sensors across miles of desert floor. The researcher, likely rubbing eyes weary from hours of watching static, stared at the data. The energy reading was 240 exaelectron volts. To understand how impossible that number is, you have to realize that this single invisible speck of matter carried the kinetic energy of a brick falling from a height of 3 feet onto your toe, all packed into a space smaller than an atom. In the world of particle physics, this was a God-level event. It was the second most powerful cosmic ray ever recorded in human history, surpassed only by the Oh My God particle detected in 1991. Scientists eventually named it the Amaterasu particle after the Japanese sun goddess who, according to legend, once hid in a cave and plunged the world into darkness. But as the data from the returned golden record began to unspool at the Goldstone complex, it became clear that this particle wasn't just a goddess emerging from a cave, it was a sniper's bullet. The fifth correction on the returned golden record points us to the trajectory of this impossible particle. When the team in Utah used the timing of the sensors to trace the particle's path back into the depths of space, they expected to find a violent origin point. They looked for a supermassive black hole shredding a star, or a supernova collapsing into a magnetar. the kind of cosmic accelerators that are supposed to be the only things in the universe capable of firing such a weapon. Instead, they found the local void. The local void is a region of space that borders our own Milky Way, a vast spherical desert spanning nearly 150 million light-years. It is a place of absolute architectural silence. There are no active galaxies there are no supermassive black holes, there are no star-forming regions or violent nebulae. According to every map we have ever made, there is absolutely nothing in that direction capable of producing the Amaterasu particle. It is as if a sniper had fired a shot from an empty room. As David at the Goldstone complex watches the Voyager data correlate with the Utah detection, the sickening reality of the Golden Record rejection begins to take shape. The universe isn't just correcting our maps, it is highlighting our blind spots. The Amaterasu particle did not come from a natural disaster, it came from a dead zone. The scientific idea we must confront is that our understanding of the void is fundamentally flawed. We have treated the empty spaces between galaxies as accidental gaps, the cosmic equivalent of waste ground. But if a particle of 240 exaelectron volts can be fired from a region of nothingness, then the void is not empty. It is a camouflage. This brings us to the most unsettling implication of the Amaterasu detection: we are being targeted. A particle of that energy level is not a wide area broadcast like the space roar or the radio leakage of a civilization. It is a highly focused, linear event. It travelled for millions of years across the vacuum, losing almost no energy, pointed with terrifying precision at a specific coordinate in the local group, our coordinate. We must ask ourselves what kind of technology or what kind of entity resides in the local void. If we accept the Dyson sphere theory from the previous chapter, the idea that advanced Type 3 civilizations black out their sectors of space to harvest 100% of their energy, then the local void is not a desert. It is an empire. It is a fortress that has spent billions of years perfecting the art of invisibility. The Amaterasu particle might not have been a weapon in the traditional sense. It might have been a kinetic signal, a way of tapping us on the shoulder with enough force to let us know that the empty space next door is inhabited. Or, more disturbingly, it could be a scout. In the same way that we sent the Golden Record out as a message in a bottle, perhaps a civilization in the local void is firing ultra-high energy particles into neighbouring galaxies to see what they hit. They aren't looking for friends, they are ranging the distance. Imagine the researcher in Utah standing in the dark desert in 2021 looking up at the patch of sky where the Amaterasu particle originated. To the naked eye, it is just a black gap between the familiar constellations, but with the data from the returned Voyager probe, that gap transforms. It becomes a looming, invisible wall. We are like a house with its lights on, surrounded by a dark forest where we thought no one lived. But the bullet that just shattered our window proves that the forest is full of eyes, and they have been watching us for a very long time. This sniper from the void forces a total re-evaluation of our place in the cosmic hierarchy. We sent our pulsar map out into the dark, screaming, "Here we are." The return of that map, redacted and corrected, is the universe's way of telling us that we were lucky the first shot was just a single particle. The vertigo here is the realization that the Great Silence is a choice. The civilizations of the voids have achieved a state of existence where they can manipulate the fundamental laws of physics to accelerate matter to impossible speeds, all while remaining completely undetectable to our most advanced telescopes. They are the masters of the architecture of silence, and we are the noisy toddlers who just realized there is a professional assassin living in the house next door. As David at the Goldstone complex watches the fifth data package finalize, the transmission from Voyager 1 shifts its focus. It moves from the massive invisible guns of the void to something even more haunting, the stars that are simply disappearing. If the Amaterasu particle was a shot across our bow, the next mystery is the evidence of the casualties. The corrections are no longer just pointing to what is there, they are pointing to what used to be there. For the astronomers of the mid-20th century, the sky was a place of comforting eternal stasis. When the Palomar Observatory Sky Survey began in 1949, researchers used large glass photographic plates to capture the heavens, freezing the positions of millions of stars in a chemical emulsion that would last for centuries. To those scientists, a star was a symbol of permanence, a nuclear furnace that burned for billions of years, far outlasting the rise and fall of entire civilizations. We looked at those plates and saw a map of a static universe, a place where change happened on a scale so vast that a single human lifetime was nothing more than a shutter click in the dark. But in 2016, Beatriz Villarroel, an astronomer at Stockholm University, decided to look for the things that had changed. She began a project called VASCO, Vanishing and Appearing Sources during a Century of Observations. Her goal was simple but revolutionary. Compare those 1950s photographic plates with modern high-resolution digital surveys like Pan-STARRS to see if anything had disappeared. Imagine Beatrice in a quiet office, the air smelling of digital ozone as she toggles between two images of the same patch of space. On the left is the 1950 plate, a grainy black and white field of stars. On the right is the 2016 survey, a crisp, deep field view of the same coordinates. In most cases, the images are identical, but as she scans a specific region of the sky, she sees it. In 1950, there is a clear point-like source of light, a star that appeared bright and stable. In the 2016 image, there is nothing, not a dimming star, not a cloud of gas, just a hole in the fabric of the cosmos, where a sun used to be. This discovery was the spark that led to the identification of the sixth correction on the returned golden record. As David at the Goldstone complex watches the sixth data package unspool, he realizes that the universe is highlighting a terrifying reality. The eternal stars are not as permanent as we believed. The VASCO project eventually expanded its search, comparing roughly 600 million observations across a 70-year time gap, a period roughly equivalent to a single human life. Out of this massive dataset, the team identified approximately 150,000 mismatches. Most were easily explained as measurement errors, moving asteroids, or variable stars that had simply dimmed beyond the detection limit of modern telescopes. However, after a rigorous process of elimination, 100 objects remained. These are the vanishing 100, stars that were present in the 1950s and have since vanished without a trace. In the standard model of astrophysics, stars do not simply vanish. When a massive star dies, it goes out in a supernova, a cataclysmic explosion, so bright it can briefly outshine an entire galaxy. Even when smaller stars die, they fade slowly over millions of years, leaving behind white dwarfs or planetary nebulae. But the vanishing 100 didn't explode. There are no remnants, there is no lingering glow. They didn't even fade. They were there, and then they were gone. One theory suggested by the VASCO team is the failed supernova, a rare event where a massive star collapses directly into a black hole without the accompanying explosion. But the mathematical probability of 100 stars performing this rare cosmic disappearing act in a single 70-year window in our local neighbourhood is vanishingly small. Another possibility is that these were not stars at all, but red flares from M dwarfs, small, cool stars that briefly brighten before returning to a state of near invisibility. Yet, many of these vanishing sources were bright enough and stable enough on the old plates to suggest they were far more substantial than a temporary flare. This is where the Golden Record's sixth correction introduces the vertigo. The data highlights a chilling connection between the vanishing 100 and the engineered silence of the boat's void. If we accept the Dyson sphere hypothesis, the idea that a Type 3 civilization harvests the total energy of its stars, then the vanishing stars of the Vasco project aren't deaths, they are captures. The unsettling implication is that we are witnessing the active, ongoing expansion of a galactic-scale engineering project. A star that vanishes without a supernova is a star that has been enclosed. Its visible light has been cut off from the rest of the universe, trapped inside a shell of collectors designed to fuel a civilization that has moved beyond the constraints of a single planet. If 100 stars have vanished in just 70 years, it suggests a rate of expansion that is almost predatory. It means that somewhere in the darkness, an intelligence is harvesting the engines of the galaxy at a speed we can barely comprehend. But there is an even darker possibility hidden in the Vasco data. All 100 of the vanished objects were bright only in the red filter of the old plates. And in the world of physics, a red signature can mean many things. It can mean extreme distance, where the expansion of the universe has stretched the light into longer, redder wavelengths. Or it can mean that we are seeing the waste heat of a Dyson sphere, the infrared glow of a civilization that has blocked the visible light but cannot hide the thermal signature of its machinery. The vanishing 100 forces us to confront the idea of cloaking. In a universe governed by the dark forest theory, the idea that any civilization that makes itself known is immediately destroyed by a more powerful predator, the ultimate survival strategy is to vanish. Perhaps these stars didn't disappear because they were harvested. Perhaps they were hidden. Advanced civilizations may have developed the technology to cloak entire star systems, moving them out of the visible spectrum to ensure their safety from the snipers of the local void. David stares at the Goldstone monitors as the realization sinks in. We sent out a golden record with a pulsar map, effectively shouting our address into the dark. We assumed that everyone else in the galaxy was just as loud, just as bright, and just as eager to be found. But the Vasco project reveals a galaxy that is progressively going dark. We are the only house on the block with all the lights on and the front door open, while our neighbours are systematically boarding up their windows and turning off their suns. The vertigo of Chapter 6 is the realization that the Great Silence is not a natural state. It is a symptom of a galaxy that is being managed, harvested, or hidden. The 100 stars that vanished since 1950 are the evidence of a transition. We are living through the closing of the curtains on a galactic scale. Why would the returned Golden Record highlight Beatriz Villarroel's work? Because the corrections are trying to show us that our map of the universe is a map of the past. We are looking at a sky filled with ghost light, the images of stars that may have been harvested or hidden decades ago, whose light is only now reaching us. We are navigating by the stars of a galaxy that is being eaten from the inside out. The vanishing stars are a warning about the cost of energy and the price of visibility. In a universe of limited resources, a star is the ultimate prize. To a Type 3 civilization, a star is not a point of light to be admired from afar. It is a battery to be drained. And as the Vasco project shows, 100 of those batteries have just been disconnected from our view. As the 6th data package at Goldstone finalises, the transmission from Voyager 1 undergoes a strange biological shift. The corrections move from the stars to the mud, away from the colossal engineering of the void and toward a biological glitch found in the fossil beds of Illinois. The universe is forcing us to realise that the same third state of existence that allows a star to be hidden may also allow life to be rebooted in ways that defy every law of evolution we've ever written. The golden record was our attempt to tell the universe who we were, but the vanishing stars are the universe's way of telling us who we are about to become, a civilization that either learns to hide or becomes a resource for someone else. Inside the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex, the air has grown thick with a kind of intellectual humidity. David, the senior engineer who has spent his life interpreting the cold, predictable mathematics of the stars, now finds himself staring at a data burst that feels increasingly organic. The seventh correction from the returned golden record has shifted its gaze. It has turned away from the vast engineered silences of the Berta's Void and the vanishing lights of the Vasco project, and it has pointed its sensors directly into the mud of the American Midwest. It is a Tuesday in 1958 in the Marzon Creek fossil beds of Illinois. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and coal dust. Francis Tully, a pipe fitter and amateur fossil hunter, is doing what he does every weekend, splitting open siderite nodules, hoping to find the delicate carbonized imprint of a 300-million-year-old fern or a primitive shrimp. He picks up a smooth oblong stone, a piece of the world that has been sealed for 300 million years, and strikes it with his hammer. The stone falls open, but what Francis Tully sees inside does not belong to the world he knows. He is looking at a creature that seems to have been assembled in the dark from spare parts. It has a soft torpedo-shaped body that ends in fins like a squid. From its head, two eyes on rigid horizontal stalks extend outward like the periscopes of a bizarre submarine, and extending from where its face should be is a long, stiff appendage, a trunk of sorts, ending in a toothy, claw-like mouth. Francis Tully didn't know it then, but he had just pulled a biological glitch from the Illinois mud. He had found a creature so defiant of the rules of nature that it would eventually be dubbed Tullimonstrum gregarium, the Tully monster. For over 60 years, evolutionary biologists have looked at the Tully monster and felt a profound sense of vertigo. In the orderly house of science, every living thing has a place. We use a system of phyla to categorize life: arthropods for the insects and crabs, chordates for the creatures with backbones, mollusks for the snails and squids. But the Tully monster refuses to move into its room. Despite having over 1,000 perfectly preserved fossil specimens, modern science cannot agree with any certainty on what this animal actually is. In 2016, a major study using high-powered scanning electron microscopy triumphantly declared that the Tully monster was a vertebrate, a primitive relative of the jawless lamprey. The mystery was solved. But only a year later, another team of scientists completely debunked the finding, proving that the creature's anatomy couldn't possibly support a backbone. It was too weird to be a fish, yet too complex to be a worm. It is a biological orphan, a creature that seems to have appeared in the fossil record without ancestors and vanished without descendants, leaving no trail in the tree of life. As David at Goldstone watches the Voyager data correlate with the coordinates of Mason Creek, the Golden Record's seventh package forces a terrifying re-evaluation of our biological history. We have long viewed evolution as a slow, natural, and uninterrupted progression. We see it as a single, branching tree growing toward complexity. But the data on the returned disks suggests a different metaphor. It suggests that life on Earth has been patched. Phase 1 analysis. Think of the Tully monster not as a failed animal, but as a failed reboot. The correction highlights a massive review published in late 2024 regarding a third state of existence. Scientists discovered that when certain organisms die, their cells don't just decay. Under the right conditions, they can spontaneously reorganize into entirely new functional life forms. They observed skin cells from dead frogs reassembling into xenobots, microscopic structures that navigate their environment and perform tasks their original host never could. They saw human cells reorganize into anthrobots that can move and repair damaged tissue. In this third state, death acts as a trigger for cells to rewrite their own rules. The unsettling implication, the vertigo, is that biology is not a destiny but a software. If dead cells can be instructed by latent bioelectric signals to build a new life form, then who wrote the original instructions? The Tully monster is the evidence of a software glitch in the planetary program. It is a creature that doesn't fit the syntax of Earth's evolution, because it may have been a prototype introduced by an outside force, a patch, designed to see if a certain body plan could function in our atmosphere and our oceans. Phase 1 analysis. When the experiment failed, the line was simply deleted, leaving only the junk DNA and the occasional biological anomaly behind. We look at the 19% of our own DNA that belongs to a ghost species, a lineage with no fossils and no tools. And we have to ask, was that ghost species a natural ancestor, or was it another correction? Are we, the humans currently listening to the space roar, merely the most stable version of a long line of biological prototyping projects? The golden record was our attempt to tell the stars that we were the pinnacle of a natural process. We sent the music of Bach and the sounds of birdsong to prove our complexity. But the universe has sent that record back to remind us that we are living in a managed garden. The biological glitches, like the Tully monster, are the remnants of the gardener's discarded tools. They are the cracks in the narrative of evolution that reveal a much more disturbing truth. The third state of existence means that life can be booted up at any time, using the very cells we believe are destined for the grave. Iskund, as David stares at the final data stream of Chapter 7, he realizes that the space roar NASA detected in 2006 isn't just the noise of stars. It is the background hum of the machinery that manages the third state. It is the sound of the signal that tells the cells when to reorganize, when to reboot, and when to vanish. The seventh correction is a warning to look at our reflection. If the Tully monster was a biological error that was eventually erased, what makes us think we are a permanent feature of the system? We are not the masters of our biology. We are the current version of a program that has been rewritten 1,000 times before we even knew how to speak. And as the Goldstone monitors shift to the 8th package, the focus moves from the mud to the vacuum, to a signal that isn't a glitch, but a scream. It is a signal that proves that while we were looking for life in the stars, we ignored the fact that the stars themselves were trying to tell us that they were already occupied by something much louder than music. We have always been told that the vacuum is a tomb. From the earliest days of the space age, we were sold a vision of the cosmos as a place of serene, crystalline silence, a vast, hollow cathedral where the only sound was the rhythmic thrum of our own life support systems and the quiet whisper of our radio transmissions. We launched the Voyager probes into this presumed stillness, convinced that our golden record, with its soft recordings of Bach and the gentle greetings of children, would be a lonely, audible beacon in a mute universe. We were like explorers stepping into a darkened library, whispering so as not to disturb the profound quiet of the stars. But in the summer of 2006, above the shimmering heat of the Texas desert, we realized that the library was actually a factory floor, and the machines were running at full throttle. It is a crisp morning in July at a launch facility in Palestine, Texas. A team of NASA engineers and astrophysicists are watching a massive, thin-filmed helium balloon ascend into the upper atmosphere. Attached to this balloon is Arcade, the absolute radiometer for cosmology, astrophysics, and diffuse emission. It is a masterpiece of cryogenic engineering, an instrument cooled to within a fraction of a degree of absolute zero, so that the heat from its own electronics won't drown out the faint ancient signal it was designed to catch. Imagine one of those engineers, let's call him Miller, sitting in a cramped monitoring trailer, his eyes fixed on the data stream as the balloon reaches an altitude of 120,000 feet. The air at this height is so thin it is almost a vacuum, the perfect vantage point to listen for the cosmic microwave background, the faint ambient heat left over from the Big Bang. Miller is expecting a quiet hum, the gentle shh of the universe's creation that has been cooling for 13.8 billion years. He expects the cosmic background to be a soft, manageable static, barely a ripple in the silence of the void. But as Arcade's sensors begin to sweep the sky, the static doesn't just register, it explodes. Miller stares at the monitors, his pulse quickening. The instruments aren't malfunctioning, yet the signal hitting the detectors is a deafening blast of radio noise. It isn't the gentle whisper of the Big Bang. It is something else, a signal that scientists have since dubbed the space roar. The scientific idea we must confront is a matter of sheer, impossible volume. The space roar is a background cosmic radio signal that is 6 times louder than the combined radio emissions of every known galaxy, every star, and every puff of cosmic dust in the entire observable universe. It is as if you walked into a quiet room expecting to hear a ticking clock, and were instead met with the roar of a jet engine. For 20 years, astrophysicists have tried to find a natural volume knob for this scream. They checked for the signature of primordial black holes. The data didn't match. They checked if it was a localized phenomenon within our own Milky Way. It was too uniform, coming from every direction at once. They looked to the distant little red dots, those early, impossibly massive galaxies recently found by the James Webb Space Telescope, thinking perhaps they were the source of the noise. But even those voracious supermassive black holes at the dawn of time couldn't produce a signal this intense, this pervasive, and this loud. As David at the Goldstone Complex watches the 8th data package from the returned Golden Record unspool in 2026, he realizes that the space roar is the most significant correction yet. The universe isn't just correcting our maps, it is correcting our hearing. To David, this roar is the universe's natural state, a chaotic, meaningless scream that we have been systematically ignoring because it didn't fit our definitions of life or communication. This realization brings us to a bridge between our world and the cosmic one. On Earth, we have the Emergency Alert System, the EAS. It is the national panic button, a system of robotic tones and digital voices designed to cut through any broadcast and grab your immediate attention. When a national emergency message is issued, the highest level of alert, all regular programming must stop. Every TV and radio network is required to broadcast the presidential message without exception, followed by critical instructions on how to survive. The space roar is the national emergency message of the cosmos. It is an unblockable, universal signal that has been broadcasting for billions of years, but we have been treating it as background noise. Just as people in 1971 accidentally received a real emergency alert and panicked because they didn't know if it was a test or a nuclear strike, we are now standing in the control room of our planet, realizing that the static we've been listening to is actually a structured, high-intensity broadcast. The unsettling implication, the vertigo that the Goldstone team is currently feeling, is that the silence of space is a total illusion. We are not living in a quiet, empty vacuum. We are living inside a crowded, deafening signal that we simply aren't meant to decode. If the space roar is 6 times louder than all known sources, then the sources we know are only a fraction of what is actually out there. We have spent decades searching for a faint, intentional signal, a hello from a distant star, while ignoring the fact that we are submerged in a roar of cosmic proportions. The universe isn't silent, it is screaming. But what is the scream saying? The returned golden record suggests that the space roar is the radio leakage from the machinery of the voids. If the Botas void is indeed an engineering project where a Type 3 civilization is harvesting the energy of thousands of galaxies, the space roar is the sound of their engines. It is the background hum of the machinery that manages the third state of existence, the signal that tells biological cells when to reorganize, when to reboot, and when to vanish. We are like a family living in a small, quiet apartment, unaware that we are actually located in the basement of a massive, multi-level industrial complex that has been running 24 hours a day for billions of years. We thought the vibrations in the floor and the roar in the pipes were just the way the world is. We called it background radiation and natural noise. But the return of our golden record is a reminder that there is no such thing as noise in a managed universe. There is only data we have yet to understand. This screaming vacuum forces us to rethink the dark forest theory. In that theory, the smartest civilizations stay quiet to avoid detection. But the space roar suggests a different strategy. If you are powerful enough, you don't need to be quiet. You can be so loud that your noise becomes the nature of the universe itself. You can drown out the music of other civilizations with the sheer volume of your existence. The golden record we sent out in 1977 was a whisper in a hurricane. We included the sound of a mother's first words and the complexity of Bach. But the universe has sent it back with a redactment that essentially says, your music is a distraction. The roar is the message. David stares at the Goldstone monitors as the signal from Voyager 1 continues to overwrite the space roar with its own precise, narrowband frequency. He realizes that the only way to hear a whisper in a factory is to be part of the machinery. We have been trying to listen to the universe when we should have been listening with it. The 8th package is complete. The corrections have stripped away the illusion of silence, leaving us exposed to the deafening reality of a crowded cosmos. But the transmission isn't over. It shifts now from the auditory to the visual, from the scream of the vacuum to a planet that shouldn't exist, a mirror planet that reflects the light of its star with such terrifying efficiency that it hides everything beneath its metallic clouds. We wanted to see the stars. The next correction will show us why some planets have spent an eternity making sure they can never be seen. To understand the 9th correction returned on the golden record, we must first understand the concept of a cosmic graveyard. For decades, astronomers have mapped the heavens and identified what they call the Neptunian desert, a vast scorched region of space surrounding a star where Neptune-sized planets are simply not supposed to exist. In this forbidden zone, the radiation from the host star is so intense, so unrelenting, that any planet with a thick gaseous atmosphere should have it stripped away in a matter of millions of years, leaving behind nothing but a naked, charred, rocky core. We have seen this happen before with planets like KOI 55, whose atmospheres were literal eaten alive by their own suns until only a burnt husk remained. We believe the Neptunian desert was a law of nature, a place where the heat was too high and the gravity too low for a world like ours to survive. But in 2020, an astronomer sitting at a terminal in the University of Geneva, monitoring the precision data from the Cheops satellite, realised that someone, or something, had built a fortress in the middle of that desert. The Cheops satellite, the characterising exoplanet satellite, is a masterpiece of European engineering, designed to look at known exoplanets with a level of scrutiny that borders on the obsessive. It doesn't just find planets, it measures their albedo, or the amount of light they reflect back into the void. You see, most planets, like Earth or the dark gas giant TRIES 2b, are relatively absorbent. Earth reflects about 30% of the sunlight it receives, while TRIES 2b is darker than coal, reflecting less than 1%. But as the data from the star LTT 9779 began to stream into the Cheops mission control, the researchers found a signature that was physically impossible. At a distance of 260 light-years, they found a world that has since been named Quanoa, but in the control room at Goldstone, as David watches the 9th data package unspool, it is referred to simply as the Mirror Planet. Imagine standing on a hypothetical moon orbiting this world. As Quanoa rises over the horizon, it wouldn't look like a planet at all. It would look like a blinding silvered marble, a massive 73% reflective mirror hanging in the dark. This world bounces back nearly 3/4 of all the light that hits it, making it the most reflective object ever discovered in the universe. But the correction on the golden record highlights this planet not for its beauty, but for its defiance. Quanoa is roughly the size of Neptune, yet it completes a full orbit around its star in less than 24 hours. It is so close to its sun that the temperatures on its day side soar to over 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. In any normal version of the universe, the atmosphere of Quanoa should have evaporated long ago. It should be a dead, airless rock, yet it remains shrouded in a metallic blanket that is as thick as it is mysterious. The science behind this glitch is even more disturbing than its existence. Because the planet is so scorching hot, the atmosphere has become saturated with heavy metals. On Quanoa, the clouds are not made of white, fluffy water vapour. They are made of vaporized titanium and glass. It is a world where it rains molten metal, where the very air is a shimmering soup of silicate and iron. This metallic atmosphere acts as a protective shield. By reflecting 73% of its star's radiation back into space, the planet manages to stay just cool enough to prevent its own destruction. It is a biological or mechanical trick that allows a world to survive in a region where physics says it should die. But as the Goldstone computers translate the 9th package, the team realises that the mirror isn't just a survival mechanism, it is a cloaking device. The unsettling implication of LTT 9779b, the vertigo that David feels as he stares at the screen, is that our understanding of habitable zones and planetary death is fundamentally flawed. We have long assumed that life can only exist in the Goldilocks zone, that comfortable, temperate band where liquid water can flow. We assumed the Neptunian desert was a wasteland because we couldn't imagine any technology or biology that could withstand that kind of heat. But Quanoa proves that if you can build a mirror large enough, you can live anywhere. The correction on the golden record suggests that the mirror atmosphere of Quanoa is technically impossible to occur by pure chance. It is too efficient. It is too perfect. It acts like a metallic blanket that not only protects the planet, but also prevents our telescopes from seeing anything deep within its interior. We look at Quanoa and we see ourselves reflected back in its titanium clouds, but we have no idea what is happening beneath that shield. Is the mirror planet a natural anomaly, or is it an engineered sanctuary? In the previous chapters, we've seen evidence of a managed galaxy. of stars vanishing through the Vasco project, and voids being blacked out by Dyson spheres. If an advanced civilization wanted to hide, the best place to do it wouldn't be in the cold, empty spaces of the Oort cloud. It would be in the forbidden heat of the Neptunian desert, behind a shield of liquid glass and titanium that bounces our own curiosity right back at us. The vertigo deepens when we realise that our current planetary models are based on the assumption that we are seeing the real universe. But the mirror planet tells us that some worlds are wearing masks. You see, if Quanoa can exist in the heart of a solar incinerator, how many other worlds are hidden in the dead zones of our galaxy? How many ghost planets are orbiting those vanishing stars, protected by shields we mistake for metallic clouds? David, at the Goldstone complex, begins to see the pattern in the 10 corrections. The first 8 packages have stripped away our illusions. The illusion that Earth is a single world. The illusion that our DNA is our own. The illusion that the voids are empty. And the illusion that the vacuum is silent. Now the 9th package is stripping away the illusion of our own sight. We sent a golden record into the dark, thinking we could see the stars. But the stars are looking back at us through mirrors we didn't even know existed. The golden record was a message of transparency, a map to our home, and a recording of our voices. The return of that record is a message of opacity. The universe is telling us that visibility is a vulnerability, and that the most successful worlds are those that have learned to turn their entire atmosphere into a reflection of the void. We are toddlers in a room of mirrors, shouting at our own reflections and calling it a search for life. As the geophysicists in 2021 watch seismic waves slow down under the alien continents of Theia, and as the researchers in Utah watch the sniper from the void fire a particle of impossible energy, they were all seeing the same thing. The edge of the curtain, LTT 9779b, is the curtain itself, a shimmering metallic wall that proves our understanding of the habitable universe is merely a set of rules we've invented to feel safe in the dark. The air in the Goldstone control room is now freezing. David watches as the 9th package finishes its transmission. There is only one data package left. The 10 corrections are almost complete. The first 9 have shown us that we are living on a hybrid planet, in a managed galaxy, surrounded by engineered silences and screaming vacuums. But the 10th correction doesn't point to a planet, or a star, or a void. It points back to the golden record itself, and to the 3rd state of existence that we are about to enter. We thought we were sending a message to the stars to tell them we were here. We didn't realise the message was actually an audit. And according to the mirror planet, we have failed to account for the things that don't want to be found. It is a Tuesday in late 2024, and the air inside a sterile, brightly lit laboratory is humming with the quiet vibration of a refrigerated centrifuge. A researcher, perhaps a young postdoc with eyes strained from hours spent peering through an electron microscope, is leaning over a petri dish. Inside that dish is a collection of skin cells harvested from the embryo of a frog. By all the traditional laws of biology, these cells should be inert. The original organism, the embryo they were part of, is deceased. In the binary world we have lived in for centuries, these cells are dead. They should be surrendering to the slow, entropic rot of decay, their genetic instructions silencing one by one as they dissolve back into the molecular soup of the earth. But as the researcher watches, the cells begin to move. They do not just drift in the saline solution, they coordinate, they communicate. Using tiny hair-like structures called cilia, these dead cells begin to navigate their environment with a localized intelligence. They push materials around the dish, they avoid obstacles, and they even exhibit a rudimentary form of memory. Scientists have dubbed these entities xenobots, biological machines that have been rebooted from the wreckage of a deceased organism. Even more unsettling, similar experiments have shown human cells reorganizing themselves into anthrobots, capable of independent movement and even repairing damaged tissue placed near them. This is the discovery of the third state of existence, a terrifying and fascinating landscape that lies between the border of life and death. For the entirety of human history, we have viewed death as a total system failure, a permanent powering down of the biological machine. But the 10th and final correction on the returned golden record forces us to realise that death is not a destination. It is a trigger. The scientific idea we must now confront is that biology is not a destiny. It is a software. Under the right conditions, the cells that make up our bodies can rewrite their own rules to form entirely new functional life forms that possess behaviours and capabilities their original host never had. The xenobot in the petri dish is not a frog, and it is not a machine. It is a new biological program that has been activated by the death of its previous host. This brings us to the ultimate vertigo, the philosophical climax of our journey through the golden record rejections. As David at the Goldstone complex watches the final data package unspool, he realizes that the alien we have been searching for in the Boeta's void or behind the titanium clouds of the mirror planet is not just out there, it is in here. The 19% of our DNA that belongs to a ghost species, that unknown lineage with no fossils, no tools and no name, may not be a record of our ancestors. It may be a latent program. If dead cells can spontaneously reorganize into new life forms, then we must ask, what happens to the human archive when the casing finally fails? We have always believed that we are the masters of our biology, the pilots of a singular linear life cycle. But the data from Voyager 1 suggests that we are merely the biological protective casing for a much older, much more resilient program that is waiting for the signal to activate. We see the leakage of this third state everywhere once we know where to look. We see it in the phenomenon of terminal lucidity, where patients with brains physically destroyed by Alzheimer's or strokes suddenly regain their memories and personalities just before death. Neurologically, this should be impossible. The hardware is gone. But if death is a trigger for a reboot, a sudden surge of bioelectric signals that builds quick temporary bridges across a decaying network, then terminal lucidity isn't a mystery. It is the program's final inspection before it migrates to the next state. We even see it in the more disturbing corners of our own history, such as the case of Camilla in Poland on New Year's Eve, 2022. Witnesses described her behaviour as a possession, a sudden, violent transition where she began to speak in guttural sounds and display strength that defied her frame. When her blood was tested, it was completely clean. Doctors found no signs of mental illness, and she claimed to remember nothing. In the context of the third state, was this a possession, or was it a biological glitch, where the dormant program in her cells attempted to reboot while the host was still alive? The alien is not a visitor from another world. It is a latent operating system written in the ghost DNA of our own marrow, a system that saw the collision of Earth and Theia and decided that the only way to survive the snipers from the void or the screaming vacuum of space was to hide inside the one thing that would always be present, the cellular structure of life itself. David stares at the monitors at Goldstone, his coffee long since cold. The space roar that NASA measured in 2006, that signal 6 times louder than the rest of the universe, suddenly sounds different in the quiet of the 3 a.m. control room. It isn't just noise, it is the carrier signal. It is the radio leakage from the machinery that manages the third state across the entire managed galaxy. It is the signal that tells the stars when to vanish, the mirror planets when to reflect, and the cells of a dying organism when to reorganize. The Goldstone technician finally realizes the true nature of the returned golden record. The pulsar map Carl Sagan etched onto the disk was redacted not because the universe wanted to hide us, but because the map pointed to a physical location that is irrelevant. The music of Bach and the recordings of laughter weren't scrubbed because they were rejected. They were scrubbed because they were noise in a system that only values data. The 10 data packages, the 10 corrections, are not a list of mysteries to be solved. They are structural overlays. They are the blueprints for the next version of the human program. We sent the universe a message in a bottle, and the universe sent it back with an upgrade manual. The golden record is no longer a greeting. It is a hardware specification for the third state of existence. We are children who stood on the edge of a dark forest and shouted, "Here we are," terrified that we would be met with silence. We were wrong. The forest wasn't empty, and it wasn't silent. It was a construction site, and we were the material being used. The 10 most disturbing alien mysteries are the cracks in the walls of our reality, the places where the workers left their tools behind, and the moments where the blueprint was accidentally revealed. The vertigo of the 10th correction is the realization that the return of the golden record marks the end of our tenure as owners of the Earth. We are walking on a planetary graveyard built from the corpse of Theia. We are being watched by snipers in the local void, and our own blood is an archive for a species we don't remember. We are not the protagonists of this story. We are the vessels. As the final data burst from Voyager 1 concludes, the space roar returns to David's monitors, filling the room with that chaotic, meaningless scream. But as David looks at the redacted disk on his screen, he realizes he can finally hear the structure within the noise. The scream isn't a threat. It is the sound of the universe working on its next project. And as the xenobots in that petri dish in late 2024 have already proven, death is just the moment the real work begins. We wanted to know if we were alone in the dark. Now we know. We aren't alone. We are just the only ones who haven't realized that the light is about to be turned on.